Zeena, don't. Please don't. Barley's voice cracked as he grabbed her sleeve, his freckled face pale under the afternoon sun. We'll tell Grandma Jo. She'll understand. We'll explain everything. But Zeena didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the woods. The line of trees loomed tall and twisted, like they'd been planted by witches with bad intentions. The fence marked the border. On this side, children. On the other side, whispers, legends, and wolves. Behind her, Ed and his two sidekicks, Clint and Mason, who were basically human backpacks with less personality, snickered loud enough for the birds to flutter from the playground trees. Look at her, Ed said. Scarecrow's gonna cry again. Bet she pees her pants before she takes 2 steps, Clint added. Or gets eaten, Mason said with too much excitement. My cousin says there's a wolf in there, big as a minivan. Zeena clenched her jaw. Her legs felt like boiled spaghetti. Her hands were clammy. She didn't even like normal woods. She was scared of squirrels, for heaven's sake. But this was worse. Everyone had heard the stories. How kids who crossed the fence never came back the same. How strange lights blinked deep between the trees like eyes. How howling started before the sun went down. How the grown-ups told them not to speak of the woods, not even in whispers. And if they did, they had to say, "May the hills keep us safe." Zeena had never broken that rule, not once. "I'll go," she said suddenly. Barley looked like he'd been slapped with a wet fish. "Wait, what?" "I said I'll go." She swallowed hard. "I'm getting my bottle." There was a moment, a soft, eerie stillness where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The playground quieted. A squirrel froze mid-scurry on the monkey bars. Somewhere, a bird cut off its chirp like it had heard something it didn't like. Even Ed blinked, taken aback. "You're serious?" Zeena's lips trembled, but her chin lifted a little. "You dared me to be brave." Barley tugged at her backpack strap, desperate. "Zeena, no one wants you to go in there. They just want to see if you're crazy enough to try." "I'm not crazy," she whispered. "But you are scared," Barley said gently. "Of course I'm scared." Her voice cracked like a stick underfoot. "But I'm more scared of disappointing Grandma." There it was, the truth laid bare. Not the fear of wolves, not the creepy blinking lights, not even Ed and his pack of parrot boys. It was Granny Jo. And the look on her face if Zeena walked home empty-handed, the trust in her voice when she said, "I know you'll take care of it." That meant more than rules, more than fear. "I have to try," Zeena said. She turned away from them all and stepped toward the fence. "No one ever comes back normal," Mason muttered. Barley's voice broke again. "What if something happens to you?" Zeena paused, one foot on the lowest rail of the old wire fence. She looked back and offered him a tiny, trembling smile. "Then tell Granny I tried." The last thing she heard before crossing into the woods was Ed's voice, loud but suddenly unsure. You won't last 5 minutes." But no one laughed this time. Zeena took a deep breath and stepped into the shadows. The first step into the woods felt like stepping into someone else's dream. Zeena blinked. The light changed the moment she crossed the fence, like someone had turned down the sun and slipped a green filter over the world. The trees were taller than she'd thought, older, their bark gnarled and flaking like dragon scales, their roots tangled like sleeping serpents. She swallowed hard and took another step, then another. Her little boots crunched softly on fallen pine needles and leaves so dry they crumbled at a whisper. The forest had a smell, rich and earthy, like wet moss, tree sap, and old secrets. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled faintly, like a brook telling a story it didn't want overheard. Every few steps, Zeena paused, wide-eyed, half expecting something to leap out from the shadows. Nothing did, but that didn't make her feel better. She kept glancing behind her to make sure the entrance was still visible. For a while it was. A faint rectangle of gold light between the trees, but then, somewhere between a crooked tree that looked like it was doing a backflip and a log covered in neon green mushrooms, the light disappeared. Gone. Vanished like the last bite of pie at a church picnic. Zeena's breath caught in her throat. Okay, stay calm. She tried to reassure herself. Don't scream. Screaming is for cartoons. You're not in a cartoon. You're in the woods, the very possibly wolf-infested woods. She forced herself to keep moving. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. No wind, no birds. Even the bugs seemed to have packed up and moved elsewhere. The only sound was the squish of damp moss under her boots and the quiet thump-thump of her heartbeat in her ears. And yet, it was beautiful. Not in a cozy, sunny field kind of way, in a weird, mysterious kind of way. There were mushrooms that glowed faint blue like nightlights, vines that twirled up trees in spirals too perfect to be accidents. And once, only for a moment, Zeena saw something silver flash through the trees, a deer maybe, or a unicorn. Okay, probably a deer, but still. She didn't even realize she'd kept right on walking, didn't realize she'd turned left, then right, then left again, until she turned once more, and nothing looked familiar. No backflipping tree, no neon mushrooms, no broken log with the moss that looked like a tiny forest. Just trees. Trees and shadows and the thick, awful realization blooming in her chest. She was lost. Okay, nope, no problem, she muttered to herself, her voice shaky and way too high. Just turn around and walk back the way you came. Easy. People get lost in books all the time. They find their way back, or someone rescues them, or there's a mystery talking squirrel. Yeah, a squirrel would be great right now. She turned around, but the path behind her was gone. No footprints, no trail, no sunlight, just trees, so many trees. They all looked the same, like clones in a terrifying wooden army. Her knees started to shake. Barley was right, she whispered, as she stumbled backwards. A tear slipped down her cheek. This was dumb. She sniffled and wiped her face with her sleeve. Stupid bottle, stupid napkin, stupid wolves. Snap! A loud, vicious crack echoed through the woods like a firework in a chapel. Zeena screamed, but only half a syllable escaped before whoosh, the ground vanished beneath her. Something yanked her upward so fast that her boots flew off. She flailed, kicked, reached, only to realize she was tangled in a net made of rope and something that smelled like old carrots. She was dangling, 6 feet off the ground, trapped like a cartoon villain. What in the fried okra just happened? She twisted around like a fish in a sock, trying to see who or what had caught her. No wolves, no people, just the sound of the forest holding its breath. Hanging upside down in a net wasn't nearly as fun as cartoons made it look. Zeena's hair flopped in her face. Her arms were pinned to her sides. Her nose was running. And gravity was doing weird things to her tears, sending them back up toward her eyebrows like they were lost. She tried not to sob too loudly, tried to be brave. But being brave was hard when your entire body was wrapped in rope and your boots were now somewhere way below you, probably planning their own escape. Suddenly, footsteps, quick, light, confident, and then a voice, gentle and slightly out of breath. Oh dear, not again. Ben, we've got another one. Zeena squinted through the crisscross of rope and upside-down trees to see a woman jogging into view. She had sun-browned skin, forest green overalls, and a thick braid that swung behind her like a jump rope with purpose. She carried a walking stick in one hand and a satchel in the other, and she looked like the kind of person who could teach squirrels how to read. Hang on, sweetheart, we'll get you down. Just don't wiggle. The last kid panicked and bit me. Zeena blinked. What? I'm not biting anyone. Good, said the woman, smiling. That's already an improvement. From the trees came a loud whistle-whistle click, followed by the rustle of leaves and a deeper voice. I'm here. What'd we catch this time? A tall, wiry man stepped into the clearing with a grin and a set of wire cutters strapped to his belt. He looked like he could wrestle a bear, make a stew out of bark, and tell a great bedtime story, all in the same hour. He gave Zeena a quick once-over. She's a small one. Must have wandered from the town. No, I didn't wander, Zeena squeaked, indignant despite dangling like a sock puppet. Someone threw my water bottle in here. I had to get it or Grandma would be disappointed. Say no more, the man said gently, already cutting the trap's ropes. Sounds like the kind of mission only the brave and slightly bananas would attempt. Ben, the woman warned, don't tease. She's clearly shaken. I'm okay, Zeena lied, just as the last rope snapped and she plummeted, oof, right into Ben's arms. Gotcha, he said, as casually as catching a flying watermelon. They set her gently on the forest floor. Her legs felt like jelly and her eyes stung from crying. But somehow she wasn't scared anymore, not with these two around. I'm June, the woman said. This is Ben, we're forest guardians. Zeena sniffled. Is that like tree police? Ben laughed. Sort of. We protect the woods from poachers, illegal trappers, and people who don't know better. Like, say, setting up campfires under dry leaves or thinking a squirrel will make a good pet. We also rescue lost kids, June added with a wink, though not usually this dramatically. They led her through a narrow trail that twisted like a secret. Every few steps, June or Ben would point something out. A trail marker, a camouflage snare, a plant that made your tongue go numb if you chewed it. Ben called it the shut-up shrub. And then, as the trees parted, Zeena gasped. There, nestled in the heart of the forest like a fairy tale waiting to be told, stood a small cottage. It was made of mossy stone and wood, with lanterns strung across the porch and ivy crawling up the walls like curious green cats. On the porch, 2 kids were playing some kind of stick-chasing, tree-tagging, who's the noisiest game. Hey, June called out. We brought someone. The older of the 2 looked up, dark braids flying, cheeks pink, eyes sharp and sparkly. Another one! Cool! The younger kid, shorter, rounder, with the messiest hair Zeena had ever seen, gasped. Is she from outer space? No, June laughed. Just from the hill. The kids dashed over, all energy and grins. I'm Akila, said the older girl, offering Zeena a hand like a knight greeting a queen. This is Moose. Moose puffed out his chest. I'm 6 3/4. I can make squirrel noises and burp the alphabet. Wanna see? Zeena giggled for the first time all day. I'm Zeena, and no burping, please. The cottage was warmer inside than hot cocoa on Christmas Eve. Everything smelled like cinnamon and pine and fresh-baked bread. There were quilts on every chair, boots by the fireplace, jars filled with glowing bugs, and a map of the woods drawn in crayon on the wall. Over dinner, wild rice stew, roasted carrots, and forest berry pie, Zeena told them everything. Ed, the sandwich, the dare, the fear. No one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. Akila nodded solemnly. Moose scowled like he wanted to challenge Ed to a duel. You're super brave, Akila said, handing her an extra slice of pie. Brave and hungry, Moose added. That night, wrapped in a blanket near the fire, Zeena stared up at the cottage ceiling. It had stars painted on it in glow-in-the-dark ink. Akila and Moose curled up on either side of her, chattering about their favorite tree houses and how to whistle using leaves. And just before they drifted off, Akila whispered, Whenever you see a third flame at night, that means we're thinking of you. Zeena smiled sleepily. What do the other 2 flames mean? Moose yawned. Dad lights them to keep away the wild animals from our cottage. Obviously, Akila mumbled. Zeena laughed softly. For the first time in forever, she felt safe.